The Flint Water Crisis, an analysis of the crisis by Adam Duffy, Alyssa Kerr, Elizabeth Paparone, Salone Shabawa, and Chris Salamadis. We represent the United States Environmental Protection Agency. Their role in the crisis is outlined in the Safe Water Drinking Act, and much of their response is based off of that act. The Safe Drinking Water Act regulates the quality of the water throughout the nation. It was signed by President Ford in 1974 and has gone through two major amendments since. As of 2014, the act was 40 years old. It is primarily administered by the Environmental Protection Agency, the states, and local governments. In the 40 years since the Safe Drinking Water Act was enacted, a strict regulatory structure has been put in place. At the federal level, the EPA sets national standards for contaminant levels. This includes one key contaminant, in this case, lead. On the state level, states must adopt, enforce, and administer the EPA standards. And finally, at the local level, localities may assist the state in administration and enforcement. Due to our federalist structure, states may petition to have full control over how the act is implemented, and Michigan is a state that has taken that power. Therefore, they maintain a lot of independence over how they enact this act. Within Flint, the federal government and the EPA has the ultimate oversight. In Michigan, the Michigan Department of Environmental Equality regulates implementation of the act. And finally, in Flint, community water suppliers adopt testing practices and regulations in accordance with the Michigan Department of Environmental Equality. Throughout this case, the lead and copper rule plays a key role. It is enforced by the state and implemented by community water suppliers. It ensures that lead and copper within the water system is kept to a minimal acceptable level. It calls for corrosion measures to be put in place and regular testing of the highest risk areas.
Flint's river became contaminated of lead and bacteria through the water systems as a result of the release of toxic byproducts such as batteries, paints, lacquers, enamels, and gasoline into the city's water systems and soil during Flint's booming auto industry era. To address the severe economic distress of the city of Flint, Michigan replaced the city's government with an emergency management by using the Local Financial Instability of Choice Act. The law was designed to safeguard and assure the financial accountability of the local government. As a result of this act, the government failed to protect the interests of the electorate and public health.
On April 25, 2014, the Flint water supply officially changed from the same water supply as Detroit to a water supply that came out of the Flint River. This was during the time when the state of Michigan had taken over administration of the local Flint government, and the choice was made primarily for financial reasons.
When Flint, Michigan started using its own river as a water supply, the city's drinking water became tainted with lead. The chemistry is hidden away in old buried pipes, but the result flows right into a drinking glass.
On December 31st, 2014, just over 6 months after the switch to the Flint River for the city's water supply, the first round of testing under the lead and copper rule was concluded. In this case, the Flint Water Company had been in charge of administering the tests in accordance with Michigan's standards. In reality, the incorrect homes were tested. They were not being tested in the highest risk areas, and the pipes were being flushed before testing occurred, which meant that any lead that was sitting in the pipes in the system was flushed out. Consequently, the testing levels were within the minimal acceptable standard. However, people were starting to get sick, and reports of people starting to get sick started to come in. In the beginning of 2015, it became apparent that something was horribly wrong with Flint's water supply. Water was running brown out of the pipes, children were getting sick, those with suppressed immune systems were also getting ill, and diseases that regularly did not occur, such as Legionnaires and other mysterious ailments, were cropping up throughout the city. particularly in older homes. At this point, the Environmental Protection Agency chose to step in. Because the EPA has final federal oversight of the Safe Drinking Water Act, it withholds the right to step in if a state is not effectively implementing and enforcing the regulations enacted by the act. So at this point, the EPA detected that there was a crisis, and it chose to address it, and we will now explain how we will address this crisis.
So we know what's going on, and we've built our team, and now what's important is to tell the people what our plan and what our vision is going forward. And the immediate thing as a part of our vision is that, one, everyone's personal health and safety is of the utmost importance. So we don't take any risks, and we tell and communicate to people that they cannot drink the water that's coming out of the public water systems. So our plan and our vision is to provide ways to get clean water, whether that's different faucet filter systems or different Brita systems or whatever it might be. We are going to come up with multiple alternatives for people to get clean water until we can get to a place where we know for a fact that our public water coming out of our sinks and our faucets is clean and safe to drink.
As the EPA, we will also be putting pressure on key figures such as Rick Snyder, Dane Walling, and Dan Wyant as a way of ensuring that there is people who are being accountable for the issues that are going on in Flint, and that there is a constant need to try and create change in Flint that is long-term and provides a long-term solution for the water crisis that they are facing.
Mr. Speaker, well, I rise today to give some thanks to some of my fellow members of Congress for coming to my hometown of Flint, Michigan yesterday. I just want to thank them for sort of having the back of the people of my hometown who are suffering right now with a water crisis that makes their water, the water for 100,000 people, not just undrinkable, but very dangerous. The people in Flint are victims of a form of neglect that's almost unimaginable. Neglect by their own government, by the state of Michigan, who is operating the city of Flint and failed to protect those citizens by ensuring clean and safe drinking water. This is a crisis that demands a response equal to the gravity of this crisis. It demands a federal response. It clearly demands a response from the state of Michigan.
The gentleman's time has expired.
From what it has been.
More than 40 years ago, our nation passed laws to protect one of our most precious resources, water, to feed our lakes and streams, rivers flowing through our communities to the sea. To drink, to grow, to live, clean water, ours to protect.
As the previous video illustrated, clean water is a human right, and that is why the EPA is making their issue our issue, and it is our duty to make sure that clean water is provided to the residents of Flint, Michigan.
So in order to execute this, we need to communicate. And as a part of this, we are going to be locating a team of people in the heart of the city in Flint, so that people can come ask questions and get clarity on what to do with their water and how to get clean water. And we're going to be, from the grassroots, trying to communicate with people, as well as using all of the public technologies with news and radio. that we can make it very clear what our intentions are and what our vision is. And that is a big part of it, is continuing to over-communicate to the people in Flint that right now we are uncertain about the water. So we're going to err on the side of caution and err on the side of people's health, and make it very clear with our words and with our action that we are a part of this problem, and we're going to help be a part of the fix and the solution.
One of the main obstacles we will face as the EPA is making sure that information is accessible to all residents of Flint. In order to do this, we will be presenting information on the local news networks, and we will also be sending out letters to all of the residents informing them on ways that they can obtain healthy drinking water. There will be free filters distributed to all residents, and then also there will be water bottles handed out at churches and local fire stations.
A key win in the short term is to ensure that all Flint residents have access to clean drinking water. Because this is such a huge infrastructure issue, much of this will be done by using temporary filters and handing out water bottles to the community.
To build on the change and help establish better functioning government departments and agencies, the EPA will gradually give control over this crisis and the tools for general crisis management back to local leaders. Media interaction will be a valuable asset for displaying the effectiveness of the changes implemented. Managing the Flint crisis effectively is centered around greater communication between agencies and clear delegation of tasks and action items to minimize finger-pointing and highlight distinct responsibilities. The EPA will begin to allow local leaders to head press conferences to update media and citizens, where the EPA will remain present to observe and advise, being able to see whether officials have a concrete idea as to who is handling specific aspects of the crisis management, and measure their confidence in leading the task force in the future. This will give a clear picture of what local officials have a firm handling of at that moment, and what they can continue to build on as they lead their crisis management team in the future. To make the changes stick, the EPA will push for specific cultural changes to take place. First, we will submit recommendations for who should hold high-ranking positions within departments essential to handling the Flint water crisis. From this, we will have made it so that the leaders in place embody what we have observed are characteristics essential to properly leading a conflict management team, incorporating different levels of management across agencies and companies, as well as set precedent for expectations of future holders of the offices. Next, we will advise that periodic staff meetings happen at the state and local governmental levels that center around bi-weekly progress reports so that staffers can discuss what programs are making adequate progress and which need to be reviewed. This will have the added benefit of letting employees know that their work is being seen and having an impact. Lastly, we will emphasize steps to be taken for community education and awareness, asking that signs be posted about how to detect water cleanliness issues and who to contact if there are problems or concerns, further establishing a bond with the community that was severed in the initial handling of the crisis.
As future leaders in the public sector, there is much that can be learned from the Flint water crisis and how it was and was not handled correctly. It is very easy to diffuse responsibility, and when diffusion of responsibility occurs, particularly at high levels, great harm can be caused. Additionally, other key lessons that can be learned are the human price of political decisions can never be overlooked. In this case, the state of Michigan was so concerned about the finances of Flint that it didn't take the time to look at what the long-term costs of this choice would be. And within that, health and safety must always be a priority, particularly when you're talking about the health and safety of an entire community of thousands of people. And finally, long-term costs must always be measured. In this case, the short-run costs of switching the water were that the city saved money, but the long-term costs are that thousands of children have had lead poisoning. And that is a very easily illustrated point in this case, that long-term costs must always be measured, but that transfers into nearly any policy decision or regulatory decision that people who work in the public sector make.